Hello, and welcome back to Making a Tabletop RPG in 30 days. This time, I'm doing it late again, and I also forget to press record. So we're a few minutes into this, and I'm going to talk about the. I have to remember what I said. We're gonna do some um, travel mechanics today. I talked about them last episode, I believe, and I didn't really feel inspired to do it. But I do want to get them done, because I want to start working on abilities for characters. So I kind of want to know what the game is about before I start making abilities for things. So I want travel to be a pretty big thing. So we're gonna get started on that. I'm just gonna give myself a page here. Let's just steal this. Go. Um, Traveling. First up, I'm going to just check the skill list. Where have we put that? Over here. I'm just going to copy this actually into this. And I'm gonna think about which ones will be useful for travel. Not this one. Probably not insight. Probably not this. These make sense. Not this. Not this. I don't think this. I don't think this. No. And no. These are the ones I think would be useful to use, maybe, in travel. And leadership might not be one of them. Uh, the games I've played with the best traveling mechanics are One Ring uh, and Rogue Trader. Rogue Trader specifically, their warp jump mechanics were. I remember them being very fun, or like at least being high stakes, and like a very exciting part of the game whenever you got to that point where you plotting a warp jump. It could be because I played on Navigator, so I had a very big part um, in doing the actual warp travel. But it was always exciting. There was a bunch of scary stuff that could happen. A lot of things could go wrong. It was like very high stakes and exciting. But I don't actually remember the mechanics because I haven't played that game in at least 15 years. Well, maybe not 15, but at least 10. It was a long time ago I last played that game. One Ring I remember more freshly. One Ring has a few really good things going on, and a few things I really dislike. The main problem I have with it is scalability, because there are four different travel roles, and you sort of randomize encounters for them and stuff. Um, but if you are more than four player characters, there's always like any that exceeds the four are basically useless. You basically clump. There's like four roles. I forget what they're called. It's like guide. There's hunter. There's lookout, and there's one I'm forgetting. Basically, one does travel roles, one does explore roles. Then you have perception, and you have hunting. And if you have more than four players, you have extra lookouts. But you always want to do the lookout checks with the person who has the better stats. So I was usually the second lookout during that entire campaign, so I basically never really rolled unless we felt like, it's your turn to roll now. But if we optimized it, I would never roll for anything really in that campaign, which is a little boring. But I also want to scale ability down if you have less than 4 players. So I was thinking that you have basically different ways of modifying the travel test depending on what you want to achieve. So, for example, you always have a navigator. The navigation roll is this, or I'm using the term roll, but it's card flips in this. But the navigation test is the main one. And then you can modify it in different ways. For example, with a divination check, maybe a successful divination check would give you like some extra info before you make a decision at some point. We could have a look out with perception. We could have. I'm not sure what this would be in game, but mechanically, it gives you like. It makes the group stealthier, so you get like easier encounters, maybe. Um. Yeah, then you have like wilderness could obviously be useful, and leadership maybe. There's like a part of leader precision. So maybe navigation plots the route, and leadership is the skill you use to actually lead the group. Okay, let's, for the sake of argument, let's plot out the different roles we could use. I'm not sure we're going to use roles. So roles, we need. You have a group leader, leadership. What would they do? They. I don't think they plan the route. I think the navigator plans the route. So you have a navigator. Navigation. Plans the route. This is a skill test. Skill test. Leadership. Maybe this person makes the encounter checks. So we've used up these two now. We could have a lookout roll. Wilderness. I think that should be like a guide or something. So like the navigator plans the route via the map, but the wilderness guide is the person who actually like takes you through the forest, sort of thing. For divination, we could have. It would just be diviner, I guess. Modifies or gives info for random encounters? Question mark. What would this be? Security? What would this do? Because I'm not sure I want even more. How much encounter modifiers do we actually want? encounter modifier. So maybe, hmm. Because this would probably also have to do with encounters. And I don't want all these to be necessary. I want these two to be mandatory. And I want you to, if you're like a party of, I feel like a party of 4 is very standard, with 5 being the second most standard number. And I think I want the players to basically pick 2 of these, but if you have a larger party, that's fine. This can scale up to 6 players. I don't see, like, 6-player parties are already pretty rare. I don't know how many encounter checks you actually want to do. So it doesn't scale infinitely for party, but at least it goes up to 6 players, which is a lot. I don't think I need more rolls than this. So I want these two to be mandatory. Mandatory rolls. And if you're just playing solo with like a GM, I guess the same character can make both of these. Secondary rolls. Or like, yeah. So let's figure out what the main roles are first, and then we can fill out the secondary ones. So planning the route. Should this be a series of tests then? Or should it be a single test? I think it should depend on the length of the route, maybe. So maybe we break up the map we'll have to make eventually into zones, and for each zone you travel through, or like main area you travel through, maybe then you have to do a navigation check for each of those, and then you have like which will cause a number of encounters for the leader. Maybe that's how you do it. I do want to use random encounters because it's very easy to structure adventures that way, without having the access to modules. Because I won't be able to make a bunch of modules for this game in this short span of time, but I can make encounter tables. And so then you don't have to make that much story for your game. You could just make it super basic, where you're just traveling back and forth to places. There's no real story beyond that, and you just play the encounters. Obviously, you'd kind of want to write something more interesting than that, but you'd be able to play the game. Especially for playtesting purposes, that's probably worth it. Okay. So let's try. Maybe we want to keep this on a separate page just to, so we can see it. So traveling phase structure. What do you start with? You start step 1. You determine destination. You just I'm just gonna type this super simple. Where you are traveling to, and how many zones that journey will be. Step 2. Plan routes. No, step 2 is designate roles. Assign a traveling role to each player character. Maybe this could just be leader. Leader and navigator must be chosen before other roles are assigned. Characters. Maybe characters are allowed to do no. I don't want a scenario where, as a group, you decide that, oh, my character is best at perception and I wrote these backwards. Guide. I don't want a scenario where a character is, my character is the best at perception and wilderness, so I will do both, and the character is like second best at wilderness doesn't get a role. So I don't think I want to allow people to double up. Signed. A character may not hold multiple roles. There you go. And just use your best sense if you're a single player, I guess. Step 3. Planning the route. The navigator makes one navigation test per zone or per. Do you do them all beforehand? I think so. Per zone they will travel through. And I think we'll assign a TN to each zone. So they decide where they're going, and then for each zone you have a navigation test. So you could plan a longer route that will have easier navigation checks. I think that makes sense. Maybe we just type that down here somewhere. Travel zones will have a TN assigned to them for travel test. So shorter routes might have higher TNs. So why let me have capital T and the capital N, might have a higher TN. So players might choose longer routes with more tests or shorter routes with harder tests. That sounds interesting enough for me. Okay, navigate plan's route. Hmm. Do I want leadership tests, or do I want just the leader to be a relevant role for certain encounters, or do I want the leader to... How do we want this? Hmm. Hmm. How do we do this? How do you do this? I I'm really trying to think what I want these different roles to do. I don't like that the way Wandering uses the roles, where it's random which role is affected by random encounters, but because it does, and unless the GM fudges it, it's pretty easy to end up with one person doing all the encounters, and sometimes that's really bad or really good, and it's sort of frustrating. I want all of them to be useful. But I feel like there's only so many ways a random encounter can be adjusted, because I have to plan for the eventuality that all of these are in play. My first instinct was that divination would help you basically, if you have like advantage on an encounter test, you if you have a successful divination test, the leader would be allowed to know what the title, like the name of the random encounters are before they pick. But that means they have to have advantage to be allowed to pick, which means that role is dependent on another role, specifically on that other role to succeed, uh, which is a little jank. But maybe the encounter is always one of two. Hmm. I'm thinking a bit here. There are a few ways we can do this. We could also have encounter table modifiers, like numerical ones. I don't love that idea because that means if there are negative modifiers, you're more likely to get the lower results, which means you get repeat results more often. I also don't love that a positive modifier would make you get the high results more often, or which also might make the lower results impossible, and vice versa. I don't like numerical modifiers, I think, which means we're stuck on advantages. What if when you're planning the route, you pre-flip all the cards, or like you put cards in each zone? You like assign a card to each zone that's face down, and then you can turn it over, or like reflip it. Hmm. Um. Navigator makes one navigation zone test per zone they will travel through. What does this achieve? I think we could do some interesting stuff with it, but I'm not sure. Hmm. Um. I really like the idea of like putting down cards, like a route. Um. uh, okay. Okay. Let's do it like this. Um. For each successful card test, put a card from the they'll travel through, starting with the first zone they will encounter. Put a card from the top of the deck um, on the table face down to represent face down with then in if the navigation test was successful, place an additional card on top of it. It do so for each zone the party will travel through. And if and at the end, you should have a track of cards to represent cards, with each stack representing a step on the journey. Something like that. We can clean this up, but basically you have like a row of cards. Some of them have one card in, some of them have two cards in, and you basically each time you travel, you take up the cards and you do like a random encounter. Okay, cool. Hmm. Thinking. I'm not sure what look at would do. I'm not sure what security I feel like would modify combat encounters, and lookout might modify non-combat encounters. Um, to begin the turn, the leader takes the first stack of cards and decides for one of them to be be the encounter for this part of the trip. If the party has a guide or diviner, they may now make their skill tests against the Zone TN to assist their leader in making a decision. The leader may know the names of the encounters for the cards this zone. So this one is entirely useless if there is only the if there's only one card. So if the navigator screws up, the diviner is not helpful really, beyond knowing what the tests will be really for when there's an actual encounter. The lookout or security security roles may help according to the encounter counter, but the leader is usually the one to perform tests. As step 6, continue the journey. Discard. Move to the next encounter cards. Next stack of encounter cards representing the move to the encounter stack. The move to the stack of encounter cards representing the next zone and repeat step 45 until you are out of encounter cards. Step 7. Yeah, I've reached the destination. Congrats. Okay. So you put up a bunch of can I do like little card squares? Mm. Go and we put like so basically it would be like a row of cards like this. And so there's one or two cards here, one or two cards here. So you pick up this pile and you have like encounters to choose from, hopefully two. Or you have a guide that can allow you to like discard it and draw another one if it's a terrible card. Um, and you'd probably know if a card is bad or not based on if it's a high or low number. I'd assume low numbers be bad. But we could have that change a bit depending on the specific uh, encounter table. Maybe the face cards are bad. You never know. Because there's more face cards. Let's just make this like a color. These are, I'm just having these here for illustration for now. I could probably clean up this language, but we're kind of low on time for today, and I do want to get this uploaded before midnight. I'm going to get this out of the way so I can see stuff for a bit. I have a second monitor with stuff on it, so I can just move this off. So yeah, for like modifies non-combat encounters. Modifies combat encounters. And for some count, I want the leader to make decisions for the group, but they're not necessarily the ones that have to resolve encounters. For example, you could meet a traveling merchant. That doesn't mean that the leader meets a traveling merchant. Everyone can talk to them. But for like some there's say there's a storm approaching, then I want the leader to be the one forced to make a decision because they are the leader. They give orders. They're like um deviate from route or find shelter, and those are like the options you get. And I want that to be like, I think they have to make the decision. They are in charge. I think that's cool. Um, and I want that to be like a thing. So this one would be, instead of getting ambushed by goblins, you ambush the goblins. So you like, instead of having a fight where you are on the back foot, you are not, and it's turned around if you succeed on the test. Uh, I think this is fine. Obviously, we need the encounter table. So maybe we start working on that next time. If we're using a full deck for encounters, that means we have 52 encounters. And if we do it by suit as well, we actually have a Now, yeah, if we do it by suits, we have 52 encounters, which is quite a lot on an encounter table. I think that, but if we split it by zone, or like per a region, that is a lot of encounters. Obviously, we can probably recycle quite a lot of them. We obviously want some zone specifics. That's why I'm thinking we might use face guards for bad things for once. Or at least like high impact things. Maybe not always bad. Maybe they are the high risk, high reward. Maybe they're always good or really bad. So they're really high risk if you don't have a diviner to tell you if they're a good thing or a bad thing. Or maybe they're high risk, high reward every time. Um I think if I feel like it tomorrow, I think I'm going to work on starting an encounter table, because as I'm looking at this doesn't really help me with what abilities should be useful, because I feel like the abilities would be most useful in the encounters themselves. So we kind of need to know what type of things the player should be able to encounter. Um, I don't know enough about the game yet to make abilities, I feel like. But I think this is like a good core mechanic. We might have to expand these steps and add additional things. But I do think this is like a good base. Uh, I feel like you get like a very visual representation of the journey with the cards. You get a sense of things were planned out in ahead, because you have like face down cards on the table that you pick up and read, and those cards were there the whole time. So maybe if that card at the end there is a really horrible combat encounter, it's been there from the start. It was always going to happen. I always like those kind of feelings in games. That's one of the many reasons I really like cards. It makes the navigator role very impactful. It makes the leader feel like they have agency, I think. Uh, these roles are all useful, but not mandatory. I think you're very. I think you probably really want the guide one the most. But all of these feel like super useful. Maybe you're like a group that's not good at combat, so maybe you really want the combat modifier for safety. Obviously, these two are not gonna come in every time, whereas these always do. So maybe we have to make these more interesting. But I feel like they're all useful at least. Depending on the spread, you should probably always get at least a combat out of a travel, depending on how many steps there actually are. We don't have a map yet. Yeah, obviously, you don't want to end up in a scenario where there's like too many combats either on a journey, because that could be like rough. So maybe we need to remember to we'll put this in here actually. Do we need safeguards against repeated combat encounters during a single travel? I think there are already some base safeguards built into the fact that cards cannot repeat. Um, Maybe we always play with a fresh deck, for example, when travel starts. Uh, the likelihood of getting, for example, all combat encounters is very low, especially considering there's only because cards can't repeat. So I feel like that's already some amount of safety. We may have to review this when we're making the encounter table later. And my timer just went out. So I am going to close it down here because I do want to get this uploaded before midnight. It doesn't really matter. I feel like I've followed my own rules as long as I do the recording on the correct day, but I do want to get it up before midnight. Tomorrow, I should get it done much earlier because I have RP starting at 7. So where I actually play. We're playing Through the Breach. We are currently doing we're actually doing traveling and exploring at the moment in that game. But it's more of a free form RP, where this is like structured. Um, so that's gonna be really fun. But we start at 7, so I need to record this. Basically, I have to work until 5, and then I have to like eat, record this, and then jump into RP. It's gonna be a little stressful, but I'm looking forward to it. A lot of fun things to do. Have I misspelled traveling or not? Uh, oh, it's different spellings. It's traveling in British English, which I typically type in, but I probably read it in American English more often. So that's probably why I'm confused by looking at it. Yeah, I'm happy with it being double L. I type in English, in British English most often, so let's just try to be consistent with that. I'm probably not going to succeed, but I'll try at least. Um, yeah, I really should wrap this episode up. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, the recording is shorter because I forgot to press start. It's like 52 minutes. Yeah, we'll wrap it up here. Get this uploaded, and I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Thank you for watching.